Think of the homeless and you probably conjure up images like these. People sleeping rough or begging. But it's not that simple. I've been filming with those on the street, and those who, just because they haven't got their own home, doesn't mean they haven't got a chance. The reasons they're there are numerous. So are the possible answers.
It's a really complicated issue, and there is not one solution to any of this. There's just a multitude of solutions to identify for each individual person.
They say you're never more than a few months away from losing your home. These are some of the professions Liverpool's homeless have come from.
Homelessness doesn't discriminate. It has got no gender. It could be white, could be foreigner, could be in any time. It doesn't give what we call a warning. It just happened.
Where it can, the council says it tries to prevent people becoming homeless. Those who it can't often end up in hostels like this. Mildmay House provides a roof for 48 men and women while they get their lives back on track. They promote semi-independent living and help people tackle addictions and look for work, and give tenancy advice. Even baking is on the menu.
Yeah, it increases confidence, and it's also a bit of fun, and it's, you know, doing something different and getting people ready for when they move out.
It's like a hotel, this. Nicky used to sleep on a park bench. He's battled alcoholism, but is now turning things around.
The floods of me, I wouldn't be able to afford it on the outside, but because this is better, it's the staff. They've got me nearly off the air. I tap myself on the shoulder every day.
Nicky has been here for 2 years and is now waiting to move out.
The biggest challenge is timescales. So, you register people, you get them on waiting lists, and there's a waiting game for people to actually be offered something alternative to here. And I think, from a resident's perspective, that can be quite frustrating.
Tonight, councillors are debating their new budget. It sees £90 million of spending cuts over the next 3 years. But the council wants to ring-fence the £10.8 million currently spent on homelessness. The problem is that while council budgets are being squeezed, the number of homeless is increasing. And that's not just people on the streets, that's people in hostels too.
As a socialist council, we've given a commitment to protect the most vulnerable. Homeless people and those who are rough sleeping are the most vulnerable, and we're there to make sure we can do everything we can.
2/3 of the money is spent on temporary accommodation. £3 million goes on prevention and early intervention. The rest helps the council deal with complex needs and rough sleepers. This last group may be the most visible, but they're in the minority. Of all those the council deals with, 92% are at risk but are stopped from becoming homeless. This young woman never made it onto the street. The hostel even allows her dog to stay with her.
It's definitely the best thing I've ever did for myself.
Do you ever worry that you might end up living on the street, rough sleeping, anything
Never,
like that?
because that could never happen to me, ever. I'm quite wise, I would never be on the streets, ever.
The council says people should always feel they have an alternative, but as long as there are people on the streets, more will need to be done to help them. And this is the man who might find the answers. As the boss of a homeless football club, he's transformed countless lives. Now John Finnegan will lend his expertise to the bigger problem. Yes. Despite millions being spent, more people are on the streets.
It is a make or break time. We're looking at alternatives. That's why we're looking at not hostel life, or it might just be a small supported unit where they can get all the support. There's people sleeping on the streets who've got trench foot. We can't have that in this day and age.
Street activity is a worsening problem, and one that peaks at the end of the year. But most shoppers will be unaware that not everyone is homeless. There were 50 rough sleepers and 11 street drinkers in Liverpool in December, but more than 100 were begging.
There's a group of people out there who are duping some people in the public, and actually they're not homeless. They have got accommodation, they have got financial support, and they are using the plight of some of those vulnerable people as an opportunity to make some money.
The council is cracking down.
Anything to keep them out.
It's put up fences outside this car park to house new cleansing equipment. It also happens to be a spot where professional beggars have been operating. Begging can be a lucrative business. I'm told that some can make up to £600 at peak over a weekend. No wonder then that it can attract undesirables.
There's stories about, gangmaster type activity where people are begging on the streets and then that money's taken off them. That's exploitation at a level that I just can't understand, and we need to do something about that.
John Finnegan has a tough task ahead of him. Each person on the street has their own complex needs. But as these players testify, there is hope.
If I ended up homeless, I ended up in a hostel due to family fallouts. And just by getting involved with the football changed my life so much.
I was homeless before. I was using crack cocaine and heroin. I have now conquered my addiction.
The task force will search other cities for answers, but with some on the streets facing persecution, those answers can't come soon enough.
I hadn't eaten for 6 days.
And while no one plans to be homeless, stories like this are becoming increasingly common.
People think that you're trash and you're rubbish, and you're not. It's just your own personal say. Had I have had a job, I would never have been homeless. I'd have been able to keep the roof over my head. My savings could only last for so long.
Today, a council report claimed its most vulnerable are being hit by multiple benefit cuts. It stirred the city's bishop to plea for help.
For God's sake, help us. I don't want to see a community in which children are hungry, where fellow citizens are punished for being disabled or sick or in need. In today's world and in today's Britain, we should be investing in support for our people. We should not punish, attack and demonise the very people who need our help most.
The report shows there have been 20 major changes to working age benefits since 2010, affecting around 55,000 households. The council's having to use around £7 million a year of its own reduced funds to help with rent top-ups and crisis payments to keep people off the streets.
Up ahead of us is an area where there's lots of alcohol cans and debris.
Outreach workers from the Whitechapel Centre are at the sharp end of the homeless plight. In amongst the empty cans and needles, they're hoping to salvage lives. They've worked with thousands. Numbers are up 50% in 5 years.
The welfare reform has had a massive impact, so people's ability to afford accommodation, people's ability to cope with everyday life. A lot of the people that come to us are coming to us because of relationship breakdown. Underlying that is issues to do with poverty.
Christian Khan manages a charity which advises people struggling to keep their homes. Demand is high.
Is there any evidence that suggests that there are more people certainly at risk of homelessness because of the welfare cut?
Very much so. We see people who have had suspended possession orders and then for a number of reasons have defaulted on those due to benefit cuts or other reasons, and that puts them at further risk of losing that property and therefore becoming homeless.
So in other words, people are just they haven't got the money to pay?
That's right, and often you can be very, very close to the edge and the slightest thing can tip you over.
Not all of those who do end up homeless get all the help. This group fears some are falling through the cracks. Despite contrary advice, they say they need to take food and help out onto the streets.
We saw a woman with a black eye the other week who was kicked in the head by someone in a doorway. We've seen a guy who had a broken jaw because someone kicked him in the head. It's just not acceptable.
Belvedere Family Hostel is always full. It accommodates refugees and victims of domestic violence, but there's another big reason for ending up here.
A lot of them is due to rent arrears and problems with benefits, and I think that's been due to the change in benefits. A lot of our families have been claiming universal credit, and that's been a really difficult system to navigate the way around. If the families weren't here, they'd either be on the streets and then social services would have to get involved and take charge of the children.
You're in a hostel, you are physically homeless. It's scary.
Mary and Caitlin are lucky. They've now got their own place.
I've made some really good friends, yeah, and we love popping in, don't we? We love coming in and saying hello to everyone in the hostel, don't we?
They won't be the last to stay here. With rent set to soar and more welfare cuts on the cards, the pressure on places like this is only going to increase. Andy Bonner, ITV News, Liverpool.